All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's alumni panel. My name is Damian Lay. I am the Employer Connection Specialist at the Career Development Center. And with me today on staff at the Career Development Center is Debbie Young, our director, and then also Sheila Price, and they will be monitoring the chat. We encourage all of you who are in attendance to ask questions on the chat, and Debbie and Sheila will try and answer and also direct the discussion that way. We want to thank you again for all the panelists that are here to share with us their experience today. We're really excited to have 4 great panelists in different aspects of the water industry, and we'll go ahead and get started first with a brief introduction from each panelist. We'll just kind of go down the list, and if each of you can just tell us, what you graduated from, what you studied, what you're doing now. Just a brief introduction, that'll be great. We'll start with Jordan.
Hi all, this is Jordan Hensley. I'm an environmental scientist with the Central Valley Water Board in the Sacramento office. I graduated in 2017 with a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics, and then I completed 1 year of Master's of Science in Water Resource Management with Fresno State. I have been working with the Central Valley Water Board for about 3 years now. This is my second position, and I work primarily in discharges to surface waters. So a lot of construction projects and things like that.
Great, thank you, Jordan. And next we'll have Larry.
Hello, my name is Larry Underhill. I was originally in the Army where I was flying helicopters. I had to retire and I decided to get my degree in geology. I graduated from Fresno State about 2016. Decided to continue with my master's at Fresno State, which I'm expected to be done this coming spring with my thesis. Right now I work for Aegis Groundwater Consulting, where we deal with hydrology issues. In general, we are obviously dealing more with groundwater than surface water. We do a lot of construction management and evaluating the results of, say, when we're zone testing or doing certain things subsurface. And then we also give recommendations on well design and repair, maintenance, that type of thing. That's me.
Great, thank you, Larry. Next we have Cruz.
Hi, I'm Cruz Romero. I'm currently the staff engineer at the Linmore Irrigation District, and I also work for the East Cahuilla Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I graduated with my bachelor's in science of civil engineering from Fresno State. And currently my roles at the Linmore Irrigation District, I run operation and maintenance for the pipeline here in Lindsay. We're a Friant contractor and we get our water off the Friant Kern Canal. And my roles for the East Cahuilla Groundwater Sustainability Agency are to work with policy. I do design work for recharge basins to recharge the groundwater aquifers because we're doing a lot of pumping in our county, and we also do dry wells, and we do a few other things. But we work with stakeholders to kind of direct the direction and that the policy should go.
Great, thank you, Cruz. And last but not least, we have Diana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diana Geraldo. I work at Westlands Water District, and I graduated from Fresno State in 2017 with a BA in mass communications and journalism. I focused on print journalism, and then I did a specialization in digitization of print journalism. After school, I ended up being an editor at one of the local papers. I absolutely love journalism, but I saw that there was something else that I needed to do. And I switched over to PR. I had started doing communications, and I worked at the Fresno Chamber for a year. From the Fresno Chamber, I went to Westlands Water District. Westlands is the largest irrigated agricultural water district in the U.S. And basically what that means is that we represent over 1,000 square miles of agricultural farmland in Fresno and Kings County.
Great, thank you so much. As you can see, we have a pretty diverse background in terms of what our panelists have studied while they're at Fresno State. And I see Debbie asked a lot of our attendees, and we have a pretty good group also with different backgrounds. We have political science, we have civil engineering, biology, political science, communication, ag business. Yeah, we have lots of different background students attending today. So we'll go ahead and get started with our questions. And I'll just kind of ask the panelists kind of in order to share in order. And then if you feel like you have other things to add, please feel free to add. And then if for all of those in attendance, if you want to ask follow-up questions, please feel free to use the chat function. So the first question we have is just simply, how did you get into the water industry, and what interested you in to work in this industry? So we'll start with Jordan.
I believe that I've always had more of an interest in water just growing up, but didn't realize that a career can be made from it until taking undergraduate courses with science like geology, which was one of those generic undergrad classes that you have to take in order to proceed with your focus degree. So then I ended up getting a minor in geology as well, with focus in hydrogeology and sedimentology to help expand my knowledge on surface waters and groundwater and stuff like that. And then joined a bunch of clubs to get some more experience with that in contacts and things like that. So pretty much to sum it up would be, it's always been an interest of mine, but then was expanded upon at Fresno State taking courses.
Great, thank you. How about Cruz?
I originally got into the water industry through an internship at Fresno State through the California Water Institute. I was involved in a project which considered the consolidation of disadvantaged communities within Fresno County. And basically what consolidation is, it's giving the economy of scale for smaller public water systems and allowing them to be integrated into a larger system so that you can cover, the cost of repairs and maintenance. And that's really what got my interest in to work in this industry, was that internship. It really opened my eyes and really helped me understand, these types of issues going on. So that's how I got started.
Great, thank you. How about Larry?
Well, I got interested in water simply through taking courses at Fresno State. I actually ended up also getting a minor in philosophy and a minor in geography. And so during all of the coursework that I did, I graduated with far too many units. But I ended up taking some ground and soil sciences classes and some sustainability classes in the geography department. And then, of course, hydrology at Fresno State. And as I started thinking about my future and wanting to, what I wanted to research for my master's, it became clearer and clearer to me that that was kind of more or less my passion moving forward. And it's just a really interesting and complex business, and it can be challenging in the work that we especially do. And then when I first got hired, my boss kind of transferred a lot of his excitement about the industry into me, and it made me want to learn more. So that's kind of my story.
Great, thank you. And last, we have Diana.
There we go. So for me, it was not expected at all. When I was a senior at State, I when I was reporting, I became an editor at one of the local newspapers. And my section was the health and wellness. And I got wrapped into reporting about the drought. And so for me, what I realized was the more questions I keep asking, the more questions I have. And I started reporting, I realized, we really don't understand very much of how water works in California as a general public. And when I started working at the Fresno Chamber, I got a little bit more involved in the agricultural businesses, in water policy, and just a little bit about what was happening during that time. Now, during the drought, we know that SGMA came on board and was passed, and that really sparked an interest in me. When I ended up interviewing for the position that I have now, one of the main things that I realized was water really does have a lot to do with our rural communities and our disadvantaged communities, especially for us, as an example, on the west side of Fresno Kings County. So really having that difference of, the convergence of all these different ideas come together is what really pulled me into the water industry.
Great. I think there's a follow-up question from some of the participants. What is SGMA for those of them who don't know? If you can explain pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think Cruz would be better to answer that question.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically what SGMA is, it's a law in California. It was a set of, I believe, 3 bills that were implemented, and it's basically just to get groundwater sustainable by 2040. By 2020, all GSAs within California had to submit their GSPs, which basically outlined the plans that all the GSAs needed to, make groundwater sustainable in California. So that's pretty much like SGMA in a nutshell, is just to make groundwater sustainable here in California.
And I'll piggyback on Cruz on that one. We deal with that a lot. The GSAs he's talking about are groundwater service areas, and GSPs refer to groundwater service plans. And each GSP varies from each GSA. And so we just had the Q&A period, kind of what we call it, but they basically submit these GSPs for the GSAs. And then after public comment and review, they're starting to implement all of these GSPs within those GSAs, trying to respect all of the comments that were put on those.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Damien,
Thanks
can
for
I
the clarification.
integrate? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Cruz.
It's okay. I was just saying thanks, Larry, for the clarification. I forgot. A lot of the acronyms that we use at work are probably not as familiar to those who aren't familiar with the nomenclature. So I appreciate that, Larry.
Yes, thank you, because I'm sure there's going to be questions on that. Hey, Damien, a couple of follow-up questions from what they've shared. Jordan mentioned she belonged to several clubs and organizations, or clubs while she was on campus. Could you, some of you, and I know somebody mentioned internships, which is great, because a lot of our students are looking at, like, how do I get into this industry, because you have some interest. So kind of what clubs did all of you join, or what extracurricular things did you do while you were in college to kind of learn a little more about this industry?
I was the vice president of the geology club, and I also participated in the 2 other clubs. Again, acronyms, sorry, it's AEPG, I think, or EEPG. It's been a while, but there's 2 other clubs that I participated in, and just kind of hung around the department, the EES department, just trying to, make contacts and hang out with people, developing more knowledge and information on what their plans were for the future, and kind of routing my directive for my career goal that way.
Great, thank you. And did anyone else join any clubs while you were on campus as a student? Nope. One other question that came up is, in the current jobs that you all have, how do you work with like biological surveying? Because you have a biology major in the audience, and they're kind of curious how environmental conservation and biology fit in with like maybe with Cruz and stuff that you do in engineering?
I would say biology is a big factor when it comes into, treating the water that you pump from the aquifer, because there are environmental concerns with, for example, if you're grazing cattle, there's a possibility of well contamination. There's a few case studies that happened. One was in Ontario where I would say don't quote me on the exact number, but about 40 children were killed due to, I believe it was cryptosporidium. So we definitely do have to implement those concerns when it comes to our designs and wells, and if those are feasible. Those are definitely considerations. So biology is actually a big part of civil engineering, especially when it comes to water, because that's a definite concern. And civil engineering is really about the health and public safety of the population. So those are really critical considerations that we do take in our design.
Same with the water board. We focus on water quality. We work alongside CDFW, and we have to do CEQA analysis and determine, whether we can permit a project based on water quality. That also, coincides with the biological impact. So I review a lot of biological resource assessments, pretty much for every single project that I do, and I do hundreds of them. So.
Great, thank you both. That was a great answers. Thank you.
We can move on to the next question. We kind of have been touching on that a little bit, but maybe you guys can expand on it. So what does a typical day in your job look like? And what is the favorite or least favorite part of your job? And I guess also we can tag along in there too. How has COVID impacted what you guys are doing day in and day out, and how are you guys working right now? And we'll go in reverse order, and so we'll start with Diana.
So, typical day for me, I think there's no such thing for us when we're in communications, but for us, it could look like we do tours very often. I see a lot of political science majors, so there's a lot of people that we bring out that do policy, that we show the district to. We worked with a lot of our disadvantaged communities, and primarily my job is to be a liaison with the growers. So a good day for me is if I'm out in the field with my boots on, going in, how I say, I play in the dirt. Because I really love seeing how our food is grown and being able to communicate that to a general public. Especially with COVID right now, in the beginning, we were seeing that our grocery store shelves were completely empty. And so a lot of people started questioning, where does my food come from? And that's my favorite question to answer. So that's one of my favorite things of the job. But for us, communication is everything. So we try to communicate. We are service provider for water to growers and water users. So communicate to them that, and then communicating to the rest of the world why Westlands is important, and why agriculture in the Central Valley is important to the world as well.
Great, thank you. We'll go with Larry next.
So a typical day in my job, that's kind of a funny question, because we do a lot of different things. I would say 50% of my job is out in the field, 50% is in the office. So if I'm out in the field, we basically do a lot of construction management and talking with contractors and ensuring not only that they're fulfilling, say, their specifications in place, fulfilling all the items bullet by bullet in the specifications, but making sure they're using the standard of care that's kind of what we accept as a professional standard across the industry. When I'm in the office, it's a lot of writing and a lot of spreadsheets. I actually don't hate any part of my job per se, except for when you're in the field and it's hot. That can be kind of annoying. And in addition to that, sometimes saying no or telling contractors that they can't do what they want to do because it doesn't meet the standard of care for the industry that can be challenging because, getting into an argument is something that nobody likes to do, but you do have to be able to say no. You do have to be able to communicate effectively. And again, I have a notebook where I write every phone conversation and everything down because things can move really quickly in my world. So, or really slowly, but that's a typical day in my job.
All right, thanks, Larry. Next, we have Cruz.
So for a typical day at my job, it really varies between my two positions because even though I'm the staff engineer for the Linnmore Irrigation District, I also work for the GSA. So it really depends, what is going on, what type of projects we have going in between the two positions. But a typical day is I would come to work, I would work on, projects from both the district and the GSA. And I would also do site visits when problems do arise with operations and maintenance on our pipeline distribution system. So it really kind of varies from my day to day. But I would say my favorite part of my job is coming to work every day and, just applying what I learned through school. And my least favorite part of the job is probably what Larry was saying when you get into those types of conversations when a contractor doesn't understand, that there are a lot of considerations that need to be taken in the design, and you can't always just go with the easy way out and cut corners because that's kind of where a lot of contractors will make their profit. But as far as COVID, I wouldn't say it has changed my position very much because we do come to work. We do stay 6 feet apart and that whole type of deal. But it has affected our EKGSA meetings. We're not allowed to meet, and congregate in public. So we do have virtual meetings, between the EKGSA and some of the consulting firms that we work with. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Jordan?
So I'm going to answer a typical week because days are kind of, they're pretty random what comes in through email. So I do every week I have a goal checklist of, okay, I need to get these permits out. I need to review these documents. I need to be part of these meetings. So having the ability to prioritize and be flexible is very important. And then being called out to a site visit as well. So typical work week is participating in meetings, speaking for my agency, kind of putting aside the self to be able to speak for your agency. It's good to work for an agency or company that you believe in their mission statement. I highly recommend finding a job like that, and just being part of any type of meeting that will protect water quality for the future, mitigate for impacts. Things like that. Pretty much what my typical work week looks like. Favorite part of the job, working with coding, which is pretty rare. As a math major, it's something that I'm interested in, but pretty rare for working with water quality. So I find ways to develop coding in Word documents and Excel documents to help my fellow coworkers with a monotony of entering the same information over and over again. And then my least favorite, probably not meeting all my checklists for the week and my checklist items.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the next question. We kind of touched on this a little bit about internship and clubs, but this is more general, not just specifically water related. But tell us some experiences that you participated in while you were in college that helped you in your job today. I'll let Diana start first because she's going to have to hop out at 12:30.
Yeah, thank you. So while I was in school, I worked on campus, which I think is 100% valuable because obviously you're on campus and it's easy to get to and from your classes. While I was in school, I I wrote for about 6 of the local papers around the area, so I got to know Fresno County and Kings County very, very well. And that helped me a lot, obviously, because once I started this job, I already had a good basis of knowledge of the issues and the kind of, community that we had out here. I was also the editor-in-chief of the Fresno State Collegian, and that was a big position that really molded me into the leadership positions that I would have now. And it taught me a little bit of PR. So definitely as a student, I think clubs, internships, and as many jobs as you can do to really put yourself out there and get to know those key people, and really, being friends with the people that you're going to school with, I think is absolutely valuable, because that's how I got my first job at the Fresno Chamber, was by somebody who I had hired at the Fresno State Collegian.
Great, thank you. Do you have any last bits of advice or things you want to share before you have to leave?
Yeah, I think as a student, it's really important for you to kind of dip your toes in anything. That's what I did. I took classes in a wide range of different areas, which have really helped me now. One of the reasons that I got the job that I have now is because my skill set is so diverse. So I can swing from being on camera to writing to creating videos to managing projects. So whatever coursework that you decide to do, I think it's really important to diversify yourself as much as possible, because if I learned something in the water world is you don't have one hat. You're going to have multiple hats doing different things, and it's constantly going to change depending on what's happening in the world. If any of you guys have more questions for me or want to get in contact with me, I'll leave my information in the chat, and feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
We'll move on with Jordan. If you can tell us some of your experiences other than the water clubs or the geology club that you were a part of.
I also participate in the Sustainability Club. They do a lot of outreach. I think that they're still going strong. And then I participate in a lot of EES field trips. There's actually a course that I think it's a 1-unit course that spends like 4 days out in the field, learning about specific areas in California. And I think that's pretty much it that I can think of at the moment.
Great. How about Cruz?
I would say I didn't really participate in any clubs on campus, but some of the participation that I did have was I would go and bug my professors a lot, and I would try and garner a lot of the knowledge that they have. One professor that I will say that helped a lot was Cordy Qualley. He worked in the industry for several years, and a lot of those professors who went from working in the industry to being a professor are really your go-tos to get a lot of information about what will help you in your job. So if I have any questions for, about my job, I always go to Professor Qualley and I ask him, what is really done in the industry in regard to design, codes, standards, those types of deals. So I would say that's a really good facet of college that you would like to get participated in is go bug your professors. So
Great. Thank you, Cruz. Larry?
I couldn't agree more with all of you. Diana, Jordan, by the way, nice to see you again. It's been a while. She was in the ES department with me. Making friends with your professors and as much contact time as you can have on campus with those professionals. It's all about who you know. I'm sure you've heard that before. And in a lot of cases, that's true. So I was introduced to my current employer from Dr. Petra from the Earth and Environmental Science Department. And I wasn't able to participate too much in a lot of campus-wide stuff, but I did make an effort to talk to my professors and see what they knew about the real world, who they knew. And if I may, since I'm not really contributing too much to this question, I do want to speak to the biology person out there. There's a lot of kind of a new fresh world of research that's going on in the groundwater microbiome. If you've ever seen a well video, you can look them up on YouTube. You can see algae and a whole bunch of different stuff growing in there. And then like what Cruz was saying, there's fecal coliform that can leach into your wells and groundwater supplies, and many other types of bacteria, anaerobic, anaerobic. And especially for potable water supplies, they need to meet some pretty stringent, what we call Title 22, kind of a minimal acceptable standard for water quality for people. So that's what I have to say there.
Great, thank you. We have a couple follow-up questions, and I think it's a good time to ask that. One is from a background in public health. They asked, would somebody with a background in public health need additional biology education to pursue an education in this field? And then kind of follow-up questions with that, what kind of specific classes would you guys recommend taking that pertains to your jobs right now? So yeah, what kind of jobs, or especially biology classes, that would you recommend? And I'll just open that up. You guys can answer.
I would say that any education isn't bad education for the most part. In our world, or at least in my world, from my perspective, I took a soil and water science class with Dr. Wang. That was really interesting and eye-opening to the world of soil geophysics and the way that water recharges. And then it also highlighted how those contaminants can be transported, and it can. There's various. I don't know. I don't know of any specific class. It's actually just an aggregate. We all talked about just taking as many classes as possible, and we kind of mean it in this, or at least I kind of mean it, because the more interdisciplinary you are, the more hats you can put on, just like what she was saying earlier. So.
Great, thank you. Jordan or Cruz, anything to add?
I highly recommend Sedimentology with the geology department. Why I took it with Mara Brady. She had us going, wading into the San Joaquin River, and then, a hydrogeology class where you're able to learn more about surface water systems. Also, statistics, again, speaking from the math major side of me, I took a bunch of statistics classes that really helps with my resume and being able to process data, knowing how to use R, knowing how to use Excel, things like that. And then also pretty much any class that will get you to write a project summary using some type of data and being able to, attribute that to some type of water, groundwater, surface water is really helpful.
Great. It's funny, Jordan, I was just in a meeting earlier today, and we were talking about how important Excel is as a skill for all jobs, for all different types of industries. And so yeah, that's great advice. Thanks. Cruz, anything to add? Classes or things that you find helpful?
I would say if you're especially interested in the water industry, try and take as many chemistry courses as you can, because water is a very unique element, and its interactions with a lot of different contaminants and different elements. It's really critical to know the water chemistry side of the job. So for civil engineering, we're only required to take Chem 3A, I believe, and I would say it's not enough, because when we got into environmental engineering is really where you had to apply chemistry, and a lot of the students in our department struggled with chemistry. So I would say that, along with physics, are really good courses to really get a head start, in that regard.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the next question that we have. This is more about how you got to your first job. What resources did you use, whether it's on campus or off campus, helped you find your career path or your first job? And we'll start with Larry.
I already spoke to that a little bit earlier. My professor actually introduced me to my current employer, and I've been here ever since. But the resources that I used were when I was looking for a job. USA Jobs has a lot of federal type work. Indeed, of course, and LinkedIn. However, I didn't use LinkedIn too much, and I still don't use it that much, but it's something that's on my list of things to do to start creating connections and networking that way, because the more networking, just generally speaking, the better.
Great, thank you, Larry. Cruz?
The resources that I used for our specific department in civil engineering, we have a fellow who works for the college. His name is Hernan Maldonado. I'm sure if the civil engineering majors are aware, because he sends various emails about job opportunities within our department. So that's a great resource. I got a lot of interviews by using that. I also received emails from Dr. Pasha and Dr. Wright. They would constantly get people, employers sending them opportunities and flyers, and that was a great resource. I got a lot of interviews through that, and that's actually how I got my first job. If anyone was wondering, I actually got it through Dr. Wright or Dr. Pasha. They sent out the announcement, and I applied and I interviewed, and I ended up landing the position. So if you're in the civil engineering department, I would highly recommend applying to those that they're sending, because those employers are actively looking for candidates. So
I think a good lesson that goes along with that is read your emails. I know at the Career Development Center, our college liaisons regularly send out different job opportunities. So just pay attention to those. That's great advice. Thanks, Cruz. Jordan?
I did speak to clubs, but there are some meetings that pair undergraduates with people who are in the field. So I piggybacked on friends' meetings that, they were actually applicable to go to those meetings. And I just said, hey, can I join it? And then just trying to coordinate as much as possible, get as many business cards that you can get, and just start emailing them. I also used CalCareers to find a state job. I wasn't directed by a professor to get a job. I actually moved out of Fresno and then just started applying all over the place around Sacramento County. Interviewed for a whole bunch of positions, and that's how I found the job at Central Valley Water Board. Used the LinkedIn, and then I have a note that our EES department held a bunch of meetings. At the time, I can't speak to it at 3 years later, but they had people who were in the field hosting meetings like this during lunch breaks. I think it was like brown bag lunches for about half an hour.
Great, thank you. Next question we have, this is also just kind of a general question, but looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self in college? What are some things you would have done differently? And we'll start with Jordan.
So for me, looking back, I would have either gotten a degree in engineering or geology instead of math. It felt like I was needing to, move on and graduate from school, so I pursued that and paired it with a minor in geology. Just looking at jobs on CalCareers, I work alongside engineers and geologists that get paid a lot more. So that's something to look into now. And it's okay if it's too late to transfer your major. There are ways to get in. Like I got in with a BA in math. So I would look at jobs that you're looking for and kind of compare it to other careers that you know, other people that you'd be working alongside with, and what their pay scale is, and whether it would be worth jumping to a different major.
Great, thanks, Cruz. And we have a specific question also for you, in a similar vein. Any advice would you give yourself when you were a freshman? There's a freshman from civil engineering.
Oh God, I don't know how to answer this, because me as a freshman, looking back, I was a totally different person. I originally went to California State University, Northridge down in LA. And I would say that I wasn't really mindful of everything that goes on in college and all the responsibility that comes with it, and being your own person and having, you know, to really do things on your own. So what I did was I applied for my dorm a little too late, and I missed the application process. So I was homeless for about a week, and I had to actually drop out of college from there. So I had to withdraw from Northridge, and that's actually how I ended up at Fresno State. I was born and raised here. I came back, and you know, I applied, and luckily I got in. So the following semester, I was admitted. So what would I have done differently? I would say be more responsible, attend all your classes, take more notes. I really can't stress how important it is to like pay attention, take notes, make connections. And yeah, that's pretty much all the advice I would give to someone who's a freshman.
Great, thanks, Cruz. Larry?
Again, that's kind of a tough question, but so something that I would have advised myself to do is one thing that we're taught in the geology department, at least, is how to write a scientific paper. But I struggled when I first got into my current job to communicate scientific information in a very dense, clean, succinct way, because in a lot of ways you do that in scientific writing, but you're communicating it to a non-scientific audience, and that can be challenging. To both of their points, Jordan and Cruz, I probably would have taken more chemistry, like biochem, something like that. I probably would have taken more statistics. It's kind of one of those sad but true facts. You want to get out with your degree, but you don't want to work for it in some cases. So you try to take the easier classes and that type of thing. But it's to your benefit to actually take those more difficult classes. And to that, I would also say it's important to, before taking a class, email the teacher and ask them for the syllabus and see what you're going to learn. Sometimes that can be misrepresentative, because there are plenty of teachers who change the syllabus right in the middle of the semester. But it's good to get a background in what you're going to learn in the class and kind of compare those backgrounds and kind of think ahead. How is this class going to benefit me in the future? And if you have another class from, say, the ag department versus the geology department, they have some valuable classes as well. Try to do some interdisciplinary stuff and just talk to the teachers and see what you can get out of them. What are you going to learn? Ask them that.
Great, thank you, Larry. We'll move on to the last question that we have prepared, and then just reminder, if you guys want to ask more questions, you guys can feel free to use the chat option. What do you think set you apart from other candidates when you applied for jobs after graduation? What do you think made you special, or how did you get that job that you got? And we'll start with Jordan.
I guess it would just be the math. I think that, you know, that was not something that was common with applicants. I applied for CDFW and Central Valley Water Board positions, and I really stood out because I was able to process their data and communicate what that meant, you know. So that really stood apart. And also having a good rapport with people, being able to, in an interview, reach that, that personal level of, I'm a person, you're a person, being able to work alongside you, making, light jokes, being able to laugh, things like that, showing that you have a personality. And that's really what comes down to it as well, is if you're going to be stuck in a car for, 10 hours a day for a field sampling, you're going to want to be able to work with that person. So being personable is really good attribute as well.
Great, thank you. Cruz?
Really what set me apart from a lot of the other candidates for the jobs that I applied for was the knowledge that I had achieved from my internship and also from my classes, and just coordinating with some of those individuals, because a lot of the questions that I was asked in the interviews were actually technical questions. And from what I heard from some of the employers was some of the students were a little, too shy to show what they know. So be confident in your answers. Apply your knowledge. The things you learn in school are actually applicable to the job you're applying for. So don't be afraid to show that you know things. And I would say also make good eye contact and just be attentive during your interviews and show your eagerness to learn. You're not going to know everything, right off the bat. Your 4-year degree is not everything there is to know, out in the world. So just show your eagerness to learn, and your employers know that. They know that when they hire you, they're going to have a training period and get you up to speed, because as far as my job, a lot of the things that we cover, such as policy and law, aren't really covered in the curriculum. So, just show your eagerness to learn. I think that's really important. Employers want someone that's going to be teachable, and also, like Jordan said, someone that's easy to work with. And, just showing your willingness to learn is a really good quality to have. So.
Great, thank you. Larry?
Yeah, I can't agree more. Your ability to make connections with people and talk to them. So the question is, what do you think set you apart? Well, I was lucky enough to have somewhat of a unique experience during my 20s, where I was, in the Army, dealt with people of from every state, of every kind of walk of life, especially in the Guard, because everybody in the National Guard tends to have another normal job. And through college, I also bartended. So through that bartending, of course, you need to be able to talk to anybody. So what set me apart, though, I would have to say is being project management oriented, because you kind of have to be that way when you're an officer in my job in the military. And I wasn't a bad writer either. So I think that's a skill that everybody needs to work on. And I think we all get better with it each year that we do it. And it's funny, when I look back 3 years ago, when I first started working, I'm 100 times better than I was then. But I was good to have a good jumping off point from graduating college and actually trying to work on my writing through college, so that it helped me communicate well in a lot of ways, whether it's just emailing between clients or actually writing memos. And some of the studies that we do, it takes some work, but.
Great. We have a couple questions from the chat box. Panelists, can you talk about your pay, entry-level pay? I think that's a big question for a lot of our students. What does your job pay? And feel free to answer as you're comfortable. And then also, what kind of growth opportunities or upward mobility does it look like in your field? So I'll just open that up to any one of you.
Damien, let me kind of interject here. We're not going to ask you to reveal your pay, but can you guys give us kind of a range what you found when you got out? What is a typical? We know engineering pays very well. We know that. We do studies on what people are paid, but what kind of an entry level salary could somebody getting out of college maybe expect in this industry? Are you able maybe to give us a range of some kind?
So, California Transparency, my salary is online if you want to look it up. So I am paid currently as an environmental scientist about $5,000 a month. I feel comfortable saying that because it is, again, public record. Entry level, I started with a part-time job with Central Valley Water Board as a scientific aide, just kind of getting boots on the ground, making contacts, things like that. But scientific aid pay is actually currently posted on CalCareers. You can check that out yourself. 3 years ago when I was paid, I think I made about, $1,500, maybe more, maybe $2,000, depending. But again, that was 3 years ago. There's a lot of pay increases since then. It's a very good, my pay schedule is good. There's plenty of opportunities for me to move forward, move up. And that being a state employee, there are increases for staying in your position for a longer amount of time, but there is a cap. Again, this is all posted on CalCareers, so you can check that out there.
Great, thank you. Cruz or Larry?
Yeah, so I'm in scientific consulting. All right, so my pay is hourly, and it's $40 an hour, but it fluctuates on what I make per month based on the billable hours that are available from our clients. So our client, we basically write a proposal saying we're going to do X, Y, Z in terms of work, and then the client signs that, and then we have a budget for a job, and there's certain line items for how much our office management side makes, what my boss makes, and then what I do. One thing that I don't have, I do have a high hourly pay, but I don't get benefits at my job. So that's something to consider for those just generally looking at the water world. I have a buddy who works up in Sacramento, and I think he makes about $20 an hour doing the same thing that I do, but he gets full benefits. And he's been doing that job for about 3 years now. That's my experience.
Thank you.
So this is kind of the question that, comes to mind first, and everyone asks. A lot of the professionals that came to some of my classrooms, that was pretty much the front runner in the questions is, so how much does this job pay? Is this degree worth it? And I would advise, whoever's out there in the chat who's getting a degree in civil engineering, I wouldn't say it's common, but I would say on the high side you can make 70,000+ a year, and on the low side I would say around 55 is kind of what the degree will land you. Usually if you do public and you enter as like an E1, I would say you can expect about 55,000, but I would say don't be intimidated, because a lot of the job opportunities that I saw from Dr. Wright and Dr. Pasha were, on the low end, 72,000 to upwards of $100,000. And Dr. Wright said it himself, don't be surprised if, in a few years you're making 100,000+ a year. I know a few engineers who probably make well over 150. So, and I guess to go about my pay, I won't specify how much, but I will say that I am salary based. I'm not an hourly worker. I do have like what's called an exempt status as well. So yeah, that's pretty much all I would say. I won't divulge like how much, but
great.
That's kind of the range that you're looking at.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. I'll open it up for any other questions on the chat box. But before we finish, I wanted to highlight a couple resources. We talked about USA Jobs, and then also CalCareers, and then those are definitely great resources. And for water jobs, I want to especially highlight a website, cawaterjobs.org. And we found there's a lot of good resources that are on here, including finding internships, links to find jobs, and then also career paths, including reading about different careers that are in the water industry and what you need to do to get there, what kind of certifications you need, and things like that. So I think that's a great website to check out as you do your research about salary, about job descriptions, and different things like that. And then also, of course, the Career Development Center. This is a picture of most of our staff. We are always here, ready to serve you. And feel free to email us or give us a call and schedule an appointment with one of our career counselors. And we can definitely go over different resources, highlight your work on your resume, job search strategies, and different things like that. Any other questions from the chat box?
It looks like there's one more, Damien, that said, do you know if scientific aid offers a more wide range of experience that student assistant or vice versa with California government?
Yeah, I would say that you might get more admin type work, job duties with a student assistant. However, depending on what department you're applying for, they might just have you processing a lot of data or doing field work, things like that. If you're looking for a specific job that is a student assistant, they should have a duty statement link posted, and then you can read what percentage of your job would entail, especially for admin work, because I would hate to be a student assistant just sitting next to a copier all day. So I would definitely check in on the duty statements there.
Great, thank you. We only have a couple minutes left. Any other last minute advice or last minute comments from the panel?
Get really good at Excel.
All right, if there isn't any other questions or comments, we want to thank all of our panelists again. Thank you so much for taking your time out to answer our questions and also share your experience, share your stories. And thank you for everyone for attending. And if you have any questions, follow-up questions, you can email the Career Center and we can try our best to help you out. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, panelists. You guys were awesome. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. I would say if the Career Center needs any of our information, if it wasn't received well in the chat, maybe you can email us and we could send you all the contact info, or feel free to share my school email.
Great.
Okay, cool. All right.
For
Thank
me,
you.
it'd be the Gmail, not the waterboard's email.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, I can get that from you, Jordan. And then.
Okay. I put my work email in the chat, so if it's still, you might have to scroll, but it's in there. So.
Okay.
And they can feel free to email me too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. See you all.
Bye.